So right when things start getting better for the Middle Ages, they're going to be hit with the lovely disease known as the bubonic plague or the Black Death. And also they'll be hit with what they call the Little Ice Age, where there is also widespread famine. So it's not going to be the best time to be living, and it's quite brutal and quite a famous period in history. So I'll be talking about the Black Death and its effect on medieval society. Let's talk about what the plague is from what we know to the best of our knowledge. To the best of our knowledge today, the Black Death or the Black Plague was actually a bacterial infection caused by the Yersinia pestis bacteria. Now today, that's not too big of a deal if you get a bacterial infection. Most of them you can fight with antibiotics. Back then, they didn't even know what a bacteria was, so they're a little bit out of luck. And a lot of crazy beliefs at the time, including that basically you breathed it in, it came from bad air. But that certainly wasn't where it came from. Our best knowledge is that it came from the east on board of ships with rats who carried fleas in their fur. And it wasn't the rats themselves that were going and biting people. It was the fleas that carried the bacteria. And when the flea bit you, now you had the bacteria in your bloodstream. And you would form these lovely welts all over your body called buboes. Basically, the swelling would flow to your lymph nodes and they would burst. And you would die relatively quickly. So as soon as you went and started showing signs of the disease, within 2 days, about 40% of the people died that showed signs. Within a week, 50 to 80. And by 3 weeks, 90% of the people were dead. And it's a very, very brutal death involving coughing up blood, buboes popping, and just awful, awful pain. And your skin turns black, hence the name Black Death. I'll let you look here. You can pause here if you want to read. It's actually a pretty interesting primary source describing just the way the Black Plague would have formed, the buboes, etc. Where did it come from? We basically know that it came from Asia over to Italy, and then as it went from Italy, it spread further and further. What are the effects? Think about this. A third to a half of the population is just dead. In some of the areas, all the population, entire cities are wiped out. It's going to have some huge societal effects. A lot of people are going to turn away from the church because they prayed to God and God didn't help them. That was their belief, and they got angry at God. And even the people within the church, say you're the town priest and you care about people and you want to help them, they are going and nursing people back to health. These good priests are going to die off fairly quickly, and the ones replacing them may not be the best quality. You may get the town drunk as your priest. You want that, right? So you're going to have a lot of cynicism towards the church, meaning people are going to be very critical and angry at God. Why would a good, loving God allow such pain and suffering to happen? Then you also have the psychos known as the flagellants, who go the complete opposite and are basically religious nuts who decide that the way that they should get rid of the plague is by whipping themselves. They take big old whips and whip their backs including until they bleed, and would pay for the sins of the people, and the plague would supposedly go away, traveling from town to town to do this. Ironically, they actually probably spread the plague more because they were traveling all around the areas, but we'll just ignore that. The clergy there as well, that went and replaced all these people who had died within the church, were basically not trained or well-trained. One good thing is if you did survive, you were probably paid better, and that's just kind of a little economics 101, right? You only have you have 10 blacksmiths in the town, and now you're only down to 2. Well, those 2 can maybe get a bit more. So your full family died, but you did get paid a little bit more, so let's look on the bright side, right? In addition, we want to look at a scapegoat. Medieval times, Christianity is the name of the game, and just like in the Crusades, they're going to find a scapegoat in arguably the most persecuted group of all time, the Jewish population. They're going to be blamed. Now, here's the thinking at the time. Makes sense to them, completely illogical to us, but here's the thinking. Due to a lot of the Jewish dietary restrictions, dietary laws, they tended to not go and drink from the public wells. It was seen as unclean. And the Jews tended to live kind of in their own communities as well. And the idea thrown out there was that the Jews were secretly poisoning the well, and that's what the plague was. By the way, Jews died from the plague just as well. But Jews were actually rounded up and killed and scapegoated as a result of the plague. Absolutely awful and somewhat unnerving, considering it's almost, in a sense, foreshadowing what Hitler does, and it's very kind of makes you feel a bit sick to the stomach to see that these things are happening even earlier. And it's been going along for such a long time. Now, in addition to this, people are just absolutely pessimistic they're just going to look at the world, it's going to be very, very dark and dreary because that's what it's like for them, and you're going to see that in their culture. One kind of good thing that comes out of it, another good thing I guess we could say, is they basically knew that their medicine, their systems of medicine weren't working, and they had to improve at that point. So increased questioning of medical practices, and we have somewhat of an advancement in the medical field. Not like they find a cure, but at least they are starting with the method. Our kind of old school medicine simply does not work. Here's a picture here of actually the Jews being burnt alive, rounded up. Like I said, they were scapegoated and actually blamed for causing the plague, even though they had absolutely nothing to do with it. Here's the famous plague doctor. Pretty well-paying job. He would go and wear this bird mask and stuff it with a bunch of good-smelling spices in order to block the plague, and also he's around a lot of nasty dead bodies, and the stick to go and turn over the dead bodies, very famously covered up. The final thing I want to talk about is the development of kind of an artistic movement called Danse Macabre, or the Dance of Death. And the idea is that death is so prevalent at the time that it's going to start being reflected in their artwork. And that death is universal. Death can apply to anybody, rich or poor. It kind of is the great equalizer. And death becomes very personified. So if you look in this painting here, you see like the skeleton band having a great time partying, and mwahaha, they will take you to the grave if they can. So this idea that death will always win, they have the final laugh. Literally, as you can see, they're having a blast out in the graveyard. And you can check out this quote here. Emperor, your sword won't help you out. Scepter and crown are worthless here. I've taken you by the hand, for you must come to my dance. Meaning, you may be the emperor, you may have a sword, you may have a scepter, you may have a crown, but Mr. Bones over here is gonna win. And a final look here. The triumph of death. If this isn't Danse Macabre, I don't know what is. So a lot of effects from the Black Death, including just a general kind of a focus on death because that's what's so prevalent in their society.